If you ever find yourself driving through the snow-swept silence of northern Alaska at 2 a.m. and you see a glowing neon sign that reads Frostbite Diner, open all night, do yourself a favor, keep driving. No matter how hungry, how tired, or how desperate you are, don't stop. I didn't listen. I took the job. And now, every night, I pray the generator fails and the blizzard swallows us whole. Because what waits inside is far worse than the cold. It started 2 weeks ago when I answered an ad on a shady bulletin board at a bus station in Anchorage. Night shift, cash only, meals provided, lodging included, remote diner off Dalton Highway. I was broke, cold, and honestly a little curious. The girl behind the counter warned me not to take it. Frostbite Diner, she'd said, squinting at the flyer. That place eats people. I laughed, thought she was kidding. She wasn't. The manager's name was Hank. He sounded like someone's grizzled uncle. Deep smoker's voice, zero small talk. He wired me $100 for the bus and told me someone would pick me up at the last gas station near Coldfoot. True to his word, an old blue pickup rolled up just as the sun started dipping behind the white ridges. A man with a scar down his cheek and mirrored sunglasses nodded at me without a word and popped the passenger door open. The ride was silent. Snow pelted the windshield like salt against a wound. There was something oddly hypnotic about it. The deeper we drove into the Alaskan interior, the more the trees looked like silent watchers, bowing under the weight of the endless winter. It felt ancient, like we were crossing into a place time forgot. Then I saw it, the Frostbite Diner. It stood like a single tooth in a frozen jaw, a low-slung silver diner in the middle of nowhere. Neon lights flickered above the arched entrance, open 24 hours. The snow around it was undisturbed, untouched, like the diner had dropped from the sky and scared everything away. The man in the truck didn't speak. He nodded toward the building and drove off. The front door creaked open like it hadn't moved in years. Inside, the warmth hit me like a wave. The heat didn't match the setting. It was too warm, unnaturally so, like the place had its own climate. Everything inside looked pristine. Chrome counters, red leather booths, checkered floor. At the counter sat a woman with gray hair and a tight bun, dressed in a vintage 1950s server outfit. She looked up at me with eyes that didn't blink. "You're late," she said. "Grab your apron. Rules are on the fridge." And just like that, I was hired. My first night started at 9 p.m. Hank never showed up in person, just a voice on the wall-mounted rotary phone near the break room. "You'll do fine, kid. Don't mess with the jukebox. Don't look outside after 3 a.m. And if anyone asks for the black coffee, you send them to booth 7. Got it. I thought it was a joke, some quirky local charm, but every word burned itself into my brain. The fridge in the staff area had a laminated sheet with a full list of rules for the night shift. I remember every single one. 1. Always keep the pie display fully stocked, even if you didn't bake anything. 2. Booth 7 is always reserved, no matter what. 3. Don't go into the pantry after midnight. If the door opens on its own, shut your eyes. 4. The jukebox plays what it wants. Don't unplug it. Don't tap it. Don't listen too closely. 5. If you see a tall man in a wet coat standing at the window, don't serve him. Don't move. Don't breathe. He's just passing through. 6. If the clock reads 3:33 a.m. and you're alone, you're not. 7. If the snow outside turns black, lock every door and hide under the counter. Wait for the hum. When it stops, it's safe again. My hand trembled as I read the list over and over. At first, I assumed it was a local prank to scare new hires. You know, get the city boy to spook himself. But I couldn't ignore the scratch marks on the pantry door, or the fact that booth 7 already had a steaming cup of coffee on its table, even though no one had come in. That first night, I barely saw anyone. A lone trucker came in around midnight, ordered pancakes, and left without saying a word. I swear he never blinked. The jukebox played a low, warbling version of Blue Moon, even though I hadn't touched it. At 3:13 a.m., the lights flickered and the warmth of the diner dipped just enough to raise goosebumps. And then, something knocked on the window by the pie case. Not tapped, knocked, for solid knocks. I turned and froze. There, just on the other side of the frosted glass, stood a tall figure in a dripping, dark coat. The window was too fogged to see his face, but the wet imprint of a hand slid slowly down the glass, leaving a trail of black slush. I remembered Rule 5. Don't move. Don't breathe. I stayed still for what felt like hours. The jukebox kept playing, the same song warping into a low growl. The lights above flickered in rhythm, like a heartbeat. Then he vanished. The rest of the shift passed in silence, save for the constant hum of the lights and the faint smell of burnt coffee. When the sun finally rose, everything outside looked pristine. No footsteps, no black snow, no sign of the man. I started to wonder if I'd hallucinated it. But as I poured myself a cup of coffee, I saw a single wet footprint just inside the front door. Long, narrow, not mine. The second night was worse. Booth 7 had a patron. I didn't see him enter. He was just there, a thin man in a dark suit, hands folded on the table. His face was pale and stretched too tight over his bones. He smiled when I walked over, and for some reason, my ears started to ring. He didn't speak. He just lifted a finger and pointed to the coffee. The black coffee. I didn't remember brewing any, but the pot was full. I poured it into a cup and set it in front of him. He nodded once, and then he blinked, and I swear, in that blink, both his eyes vanished for a split second, like someone had pressed pause on his face. He drank it slowly. With each sip, the diner grew colder. The windows frosted over. My breath became visible. And then he whispered, "2 more nights," he said. I turned to ask what he meant, but he was gone. The booth was empty. The coffee was gone. The table was bone dry. No trace he'd ever been there. That night, the jukebox played nothing. Not a single note. The silence was heavier than any sound. At 3:33 a.m., I heard a voice whisper my name from the pantry. It wasn't possible. I hadn't told anyone I was working here. But it came again, louder. "Eli, that's my name." The pantry door creaked. I didn't look. I remembered Rule 3. Shut your eyes. I clenched them tight and counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. When I opened them, the door was shut. A smear of red across the floor stretched out from the crack beneath it. It's been 4 nights now. Every rule has proven true. Every threat, real. The snow outside has begun to darken at the edges. The man in the wet coat returns more often. The jukebox plays backwards some nights. And once, I swear the trucker from night 1 was sitting in a booth again, despite having left for good. But tonight, something's changed. Booth 7 has 2 cups set out. The clock hasn't moved in over an hour. It's stuck at 3:33, and I just heard someone knock on the back door, the one with no handle from the outside. I don't know how much longer I could survive this job, but I'm starting to think Frostbite Diner isn't a place. It's a trap. The knock on the back door came again. 3 soft raps, evenly spaced, like a polite guest waiting to be let in. But no one ever uses that door. It doesn't even face the road. Beyond it is just frozen woods and a steep drop-off into a ravine. Still, someone was knocking. The worst part, I couldn't stop myself. I walked toward the sound like I was sleepwalking, every step silent on the cold tile. My breath fogged in front of me. The heat had died, even though the thermostat still read 72. The humming of the lights above had slowed, like the building itself was holding its breath. I reached the door, and just before I touched the knob, I remembered something I'd almost forgotten. There is no knob on that side. My heart jerked to my chest. I backed away, step by step. A soft scraping sound followed me. Fingernails across metal. Something was dragging along the back of the diner, scratching a path. It circled. Once. Twice. Then it stopped. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. But I also couldn't move. The next sound was much worse. A voice, muffled but unmistakable, whispered from the other side. "You didn't say goodbye." I nearly fell backward. That was the same voice from the pantry the night before. And that's when I realized I hadn't told anyone my name. I hadn't said it out loud since arriving. No one had called me by it, except that voice. It knew me. The door never opened. Eventually, the heat returned. The lights stopped flickering. The jukebox resumed with a scratchy Elvis tune, and morning came like nothing had happened. But I knew better now. This place, it remembers you. And if you let it in, even once, it never lets you go. I decided to call Hank the next afternoon. I'd had enough. The pay wasn't worth it. The food wasn't real. Don't ask me how I know, but after 3 nights of eating it, I never got full. Never got tired either. Just numb. The rotary phone by the break room crackled as I lifted the receiver. No dial tone. No ringing. I set it back down and turned to leave, only to find the pantry door open behind me. Wide open. There was nothing inside. Just rows of canned soup, bags of flour, and a mirror. A full-length mirror propped against the back wall where none had been before. I stared at it, and the reflection stared back, but it wasn't me. It looked like me. Same face. Same apron, same bloodshot eyes, but it wasn't mirroring my movements. It was standing still, watching, grinning. The lights above me buzzed violently. I backed away and slammed the pantry shut. When I opened it seconds later, the mirror was gone. That's when I realized something horrible. The pantry door wasn't the only thing that had opened. My curiosity had. That night, just after 1 a.m., I got my first real customer since the trucker. 2 men in fur-lined coats, covered in snow, dragging in the cold like it was stitched to their skin. They didn't say a word, just sat down at booth 3 and stared at me. Not at the menu, not at each other, at me. I approached cautiously. "What can I get you?" I asked. The one closest to the window raised his hand, palm down, and gently tapped the table 3 times. The same rhythm as the knock on the back door. I felt every hair on my body stand on end. The other man finally spoke. "Black coffee." I nearly dropped my pen. My eyes flicked to booth 7, but it was empty. Still, I remembered the rule. If anyone asks for the black coffee, send them to booth 7. I pointed to the booth. "That's your seat." Neither moved. "Booth 7, I repeated, louder this time. The first man smiled, and for a fraction of a second, I saw it. Teeth, yes, but too many. Too long. The kind of smile that doesn't belong on a human face. They stood in unison and moved across the floor with a strange grace, like their boots weren't touching the tile. They slid into booth 7. Instantly, the jukebox went silent. I poured a cup of the black coffee though I don't remember brewing it. It was always there, pitch black, no steam, no scent, like a void in liquid form. When I placed it on their table, neither said thank you. The one by the window looked out into the snow and muttered, "Soon." "Soon what?" I asked, stupidly. He didn't answer. Instead, he slid a photograph across the table. It was yellowed and cracked, like it had been dug out of the ground. I picked it up and dropped it immediately. It was a photo of me, standing outside the diner. But the snow around me was black, and the sky was gone, replaced with an endless dark spiral, like the night had teeth. I turned back to the booth, but the men were gone. Not like they'd left. Gone. No door opened. No sound. Just gone. The cup of black coffee was full again. At 3 a.m., the man in the wet coat returned. This time, he pressed his forehead against the glass and began to mouth something I couldn't hear. Over and over. I dared to get closer. That's when I saw his reflection in the stainless steel napkin holder. It wasn't a man. It wasn't even shaped like one. Inside the diner's warm glow, I saw it for what it was. Hollow eyes, stretched limbs, and something moving beneath the surface of its skin, like worms shifting beneath ice. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. And in that warped reflection, I saw it looking back at me. I dove behind the counter, heart pounding. When I looked up, the windows were clean again. Clear. No sign of him. The lights hummed louder than ever, like the diner itself was laughing. I stayed behind the counter until the sun touched the windows. Then I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I walked out into the snow. There's an old trail behind the diner that leads into the woods. I hadn't noticed it before, not until that morning, when I saw bare footprints in the snow. Human prints, but they didn't lead away from the building. They led to it. I followed them. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe the diner was breaking me down night by night. But something inside me needed to know what was coming. What the two men had meant by soon. What the photograph was warning me about. The trees closed in quickly. The world grew quiet, as if sound had no permission to pass here. After maybe 100 yards, I found the source of the footprints. A cabin, or what used to be one. Now it was just blackened wood, broken stone, and a frozen well at its center. A single window stared back at me like an open eye. There were carvings on the walls, deep gouges, symbols I didn't recognize, but that made my stomach twist just to look at. Spirals, teeth, slashes through circles. Inside the cabin, I found a dusty coat nailed to the wall. A work badge was still clipped to it. My name, my face, my start date, January 12th, 1987. That was impossible. I was born in 1997. I stumbled back, hit the floor, and saw more photos spread beneath the old floorboards. Hundreds of them, all with different faces, all standing outside the diner, all with the same black snow, all dated before they were born. Every single one. I ran back. The diner loomed ahead like a hungry mouth in the snow. The sign buzzed like it was laughing at me. As I approached, I saw something new. A handprint on the glass. Inside, pressed flat, waiting. I didn't go in. Not yet. Because standing behind the counter, in my uniform, was me, pouring a cup of coffee, smiling, and waiting for the next visitor. There's something wrong with the reflection in the window. It's not mimicking me anymore. It stands perfectly still while I tremble. I see myself pouring coffee for customers who don't exist, and yet, the cups always come back empty. This diner is no longer a place to survive the night. It's a trap, and I think it's beginning to remember who I used to be. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. Standing in a window of that cursed diner, beneath the flickering buzz of the ancient neon sign, was someone wearing my face. Same coat, same shaggy hair, same tired eyes. Only, he was moving like a marionette. Too precise, too slow. It wasn't me, not really, but he smiled like he knew me. I backed away into the snow. The wind whipped up and howled through the surrounding trees like wolves calling to each other. My phone had no service. My watch was frozen at 2:17 a.m., and the door to the diner was suddenly wide open. The version of me, my doppelganger, lifted a steaming mug of black coffee and beckoned with his free hand. I ran. The trail into the woods felt endless this time. I should have hit the cabin again, but I never did. Instead, the forest stretched on, unfamiliar and twisting. My footprints disappeared behind me, erased as if I'd never been there. I screamed. No echo came back. Then I saw lights. Warm, yellow, soft like candle glow. A second building. I stumbled forward and emerged into a clearing. And that's when I saw it. Another diner, identical to the one I just fled. Same windows, same layout, same flickering sign. Only this one didn't say diner. It simply read, "Welcome back." Inside, a man sat alone in booth 7, sipping coffee that didn't steam. He looked up when I pressed my face to the window. It was Hank, only older, gaunt, hair now snow white, skin cracked like the walls of the pantry. And he mouthed the words, "Get out." Before I could react, I felt something cold grip my ankle. I looked down. A hand, pale and waxy, was reaching out of the snow. I screamed and kicked free, tumbling backward into the drifts. When I looked again, the second diner was gone. Nothing but forest and silence. I made it back to the original diner at dawn. My legs burned. My breath wheezed. But there it stood, still humming, still waiting. I stepped inside slowly, expecting to see the reflection of myself at the counter. But it was gone. Only silence. The radio wasn't on. The jukebox sat idle. The booths were all empty. And then I saw the note. Taped to the register was a yellowed piece of paper that hadn't been there before. On it, in perfect red ink, were 3 words. "Don't look back." I turned around anyway. The pantry door was open again. But this time, I didn't walk away. I stepped inside, heart thudding against my ribs. There was the mirror, standing tall, waiting. Only this time, there was someone else in it. It wasn't me, and it wasn't the doppelganger from before. This version had black holes for eyes and a gaping wound across its chest, and it pointed at me. I staggered back, but behind me, I heard another sound. The bell above the front door jingled. Footsteps. I rushed out of the pantry to find someone standing at the counter. A young woman. She looked about my age, wearing a uniform like mine. She turned, startled. "Oh, sorry, didn't know anyone else was on this shift," she said. "Are you the day guy?" I froze. "Oh no, I work nights." She frowned. "Strange. I was told I was the new night shift." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't look good. You okay?" I didn't answer. I just walked past her and out the door. Something was deeply wrong. Outside, the snow was rising higher than I remembered. The rodent was gone, swallowed by drifts that seemed to move even without the wind. Trees leaned unnaturally toward the diner, and there were new footprints leading from the woods toward the front entrance. Someone else was coming, or had already arrived. Inside, the new girl was humming, like she belonged, like I had once. But that meant the diner didn't let you leave. It replaced you. The moment you realized it, it gave you away. I started walking, no direction, no plan. I just knew I couldn't go back inside. My boots crunched in the frozen crust of the snow. My hands were turning blue, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. Then I saw it again. Another cabin, but not the same one. This one was newer, windows intact, the chimney smoking. I approached it, heart hammering, and knocked. The door creaked open. Inside, a group of people huddled around a fire. They all looked up at once. Every face was one I'd seen in the photos under the floorboards. Older now, worn, but the same. Another one made it. Someone whispered. A man stood. "Come in. Warm up. You've been working the diner, haven't you?" I nodded, too numb to speak. He led me inside and handed me a cup of something warm. "We were like you," he said. "Some of us from the 60s. 80s, a few more recent. Every few years, someone escapes." "Escapes?" I asked. "So, it is a trap?" He looked into the fire. "Worse. It's a ritual." "A ritual for what?" He didn't answer, but one of the others did. "To feed it." I stared at them. "Feed what?" The woman closest to me leaned in. "The thing in the pantry. The diner is just a mask. A lure. It uses our images to keep the cycle going. Once it knows your name, you're part of the offering. Unless. Unless what?" I asked. She met my eyes. "Unless you find a replacement." I didn't sleep that day. I sat by the fire, my head spinning, as the other survivors talked in hushed tones. The rules, the mimicry, the black coffee, the ones who knock but never speak. They'd all seen them, all barely escaped. But one thing they agreed on was this: once you leave, you can never go back. That night, I returned to the edge of the woods and watched from a distance as the lights inside the diner flickered on again. The new girl moved like she'd always belonged, laughing, wiping down counters, pouring drinks. And at booth 7 sat the two fur-coated strangers from before, the black coffee steaming between them, watching her, waiting. Every night, someone sits in booth 7 and watches the newest employee with empty eyes and a steaming cup of black coffee. They don't speak. They don't blink. They only wait. But I've learned the truth. The diner isn't haunted by ghosts. It's haunted by memories that won't die. And tonight, I'm going back. Not to survive, but to end it. I didn't tell the others I was leaving. They would have tried to stop me, warned me, pleaded with me, maybe even locked me inside that cabin. But none of them remembered who they were before the diner. The longer you're gone, the more of yourself it takes. And I wasn't ready to forget. I still remember my sister's voice, my mom's blueberry pancakes, the ache in my ribs when I laughed too hard. I remembered being me, and I wasn't about to let some cursed roadside diner erase that. But to break the cycle, I had to return. I needed answers, real ones. So I waited until they were asleep, grabbed the thickest coat I could find, and slipped out into the biting dark. The wind bit harder that night. The air carried a hum, like a whisper just behind your ear, something you could never quite catch, but always feel. Snow fell sideways. Still, the diner's lights glowed steady in the distance, like a lighthouse built to drown ships instead of save them. I reached the building just past midnight. The windows were frosted, but through them I could see her, the new girl, moving like she'd worked there her whole life, laughing with invisible customers, pouring invisible coffee. Booth 7 was occupied, of course. The same two men, still, watching, sipping. I didn't enter through the front door. Instead, I circled to the back, where the storage freezer and garbage bins were. I remember Hank's keys, still in my pocket. One of them worked on the back door. Inside, it was warm, too warm. The thermostat was cracked, the air stale and thick. The hum of the lights overhead felt too loud, like they were breathing. And then, a voice behind me. "You came back." I turned. It was her, the new girl. Eyes wide, face unreadable. "I thought I was losing my mind," she whispered. "Things are wrong here. People leave and come back different." I nodded slowly. "I know. You have to listen to me. There's something in the pantry. Something behind the mirror. It's been using people like us for decades." She looked down the hall, toward the pantry door. "I heard voices coming from inside," she said. "They said my name." The exact moment she said that, the bell above the front door jingled. Footsteps. We weren't alone. I pulled her behind the counter, crouched low. From our spot, we could just see past the coffee machines into the dining area. 2 people had entered. I recognized them instantly. They were from the cabin. Survivors. Only they weren't anymore. They moved stiffly, smiling too much, eyes glossy and vacant. "I told you," I whispered. "It finds replacements." "But how do you stop it?" she asked. I hesitated. My chest pounded. "There's something under the diner." Hank hinted at it. "Some kind of source. If I can find it and destroy it, maybe we break the loop." She swallowed hard. "I'll distract them," she said. "You find whatever's beneath us." "Are you sure?" She nodded. "You came back for a reason. Finish this." She stood up, grabbed a tray of dishes, and made her way toward the imposters. Her voice rose in artificial cheer. She was good, too good. The figures turned to her, smiling wider now, impossibly wide. But they followed. As they trailed her into the kitchen, I slipped into the pantry. It was colder than ever. Frost climbed the walls in jagged veins. The mirror loomed in the back, warped and pulsing faintly. I walked up to it, heart in my throat. This time, there was no reflection, only a hole, a black, gaping passage behind where the glass had been. I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside. The world twisted instantly. No sensation of falling, no sensation of movement at all. Just an instant, jarring change. I stood in a tunnel. Wooden beams lined the walls, dripping with condensation. Pipes hissed and groaned somewhere far below. The ground beneath me was sticky, like walking on old molasses. And the smell. It was like something dead had been trapped down here for decades. Something that should never have been disturbed. I kept going. After what felt like forever, I reached a chamber, and inside it, a creature. No eyes, no mouth, just a massive, humanoid thing with skin like ice and bones beneath the surface that seemed to shift and twitch. But it wasn't moving. It was chained. Around the room were photos, hundreds of them. Faces of employees, survivors, victims, all pinned to the walls like trophies. In the center of the room was a control panel, ancient looking, rusted, wires running into the ice itself. One big red button sat at the center. No label, no instructions, but I didn't need them. I pressed it. The sound that followed was like a building sighing. The chains trembled. The creature's body jerked once, then went still. And suddenly, all the lights went out. When I woke, I was outside, lying in the snow. The diner was burning. Flames licked up into the sky, a pillar of smoke twisting toward the clouds like a warning to the heavens. The new girl stood nearby, breathing hard, her eyes wide with shock. "What did you do?" she asked. "I shut it down," I said, or tried to. Something behind me stirred. The ground cracked, and then the creature rose. Not as a body, no. It was vapor now, smoke and frost and thought. It poured upward into the sky, howling as it shed the last of its prison. The flames didn't consume it. They released it. We ran. Back in the cabin, the others were waiting. They looked different, more alert, their eyes clearer. "You did it," one of them whispered. "It's over." But I wasn't so sure. Outside, the sky turned red. Later that night, as we huddled by the fire, the girl looked at me. "So what now?" I didn't have an answer, but when I looked out the window, I saw something glowing in the distance. Another building, another diner, identical to the one we left behind. Only this time, the sign read, "We missed you." I thought I destroyed it. I watched the flames consume every inch of that cursed diner. But it's back. A perfect copy, glowing in the frozen distance like it never left. We ran, but the rules don't care. The diner doesn't stay in one place. It follows. And now, it's waiting for me to clock back in. The air tasted of soot, not smoke. Soot, like the remains of something ancient reduced to ashes and memory. The sky hadn't turned blue since the night we fled the diner. It stayed tinged with red, as if the creature I released had stained the atmosphere itself. And in the distance, just visible from the cabin, was the silhouette of a building that shouldn't exist anymore. A diner, identical to the last. Same neon sign, same flickering, open light in the window. And worst of all, same eerie glow behind booth 7. It was waiting, watching, calling us back. The girl, her name was June, I finally remembered, stood next to me in silence, eyes locked on that distant glow. "Maybe it's another illusion," she whispered. "Maybe it's just trying to scare us." But I knew better. The thing down there, it never dies. You can't kill what's built on memory, on repetition. You can't destroy something that feeds on your belief. You have to starve it. So I made a decision. "We're going back," I said. The others in the cabin argued, pleaded, even screamed. But they weren't fully awake yet. The diners still owned parts of them, stitched into their minds like branding iron scars. They didn't remember the whole truth. I did. In June followed. We hiked toward it in the dead of night, wrapped in layers that did nothing to fight the cold. The snow fell heavier now, not as flakes but as ash, gray, weightless, choking. The path had changed. Instead of tundra, we walked through a stretch of roadside that repeated every few feet. Same bent stop sign, same dead fox, same cracked mile marker, like walking through a loop in time. We reached the diner at 2:16 a.m., the exact time the register always jammed, the time the door opened by itself, the time the whispers began. It looked cleaner than before, new almost. Even the chrome gleamed, unmarred by time or decay. June grabbed my arm before we stepped inside. "If we go in," she said, "we might not come back out." "We never really left," I replied. "Let's finish this." The bell above the door chirped. Not rang. Chirped, like the cry of a broken bird. Inside, the booths were filled with people. Some were transparent. Some wore 1950s uniforms. Some just sat there, smiling like mannequins with painted-on teeth. All of them turned to look at us, but none moved. Booth 7 was still occupied. Only this time, I was sitting there. It was me. Same coat, same eyes, just older, grayer, hollow. The thing in the mirror wasn't copying me. It had become me. I walked up to the booth, knuckles white, heart thundering in my chest. The other me stared back with glassy eyes. "You took too long," he whispered. "Now there's no version of you that leaves." June grabbed my hand. "Let's go. Let's run. We can find another way." But I shook my head. "I think I know how to end it." I slid into the booth and sat across from myself. Time slowed. The diner grew quiet, deathly quiet. Even the wind outside stopped. It was just me and me. He had smiled. "You don't understand," it said. "This place isn't a prison. It's a mirror. You're not trapped here. You're reflected. What do you want from me?" I hissed. It leaned forward. "I want you to serve." The rules began to echo in my mind again. Never enter through the front door after 3:33 a.m. Never speak to the man in booth 7. Never, ever work past your shift. I had broken all 3. Maybe that was the point. Maybe they weren't warnings. They were lures. A test. A contract. Break the rules, and you're eligible. June moved to pull me out of the booth, but the floor beneath us cracked open like thin ice. Below was a void. Inside it, memories fell like snowflakes. Faces I'd forgotten, words I never said, moments I'd abandoned. They drifted downward forever. The booth tilted, and we were falling with it. But then, I let go. I let go of everything. The fear, the questions, the need to remember. Because that's what it wanted. It fed on the mind's resistance, the desperate fight to understand. But if I stopped trying, if I stopped playing, it couldn't win. I closed my eyes and woke up in a field. Warm sun, green grass, no snow, no frost, just peace. June sat next to me, confused but alive, really alive. The diner was gone. Not just gone, erased, like it had never existed. My coat was missing, my wallet, my watch, but I didn't care. It was over. We walked for hours and eventually found a ranger station. They said the road hadn't been open for years. No one had seen a diner out there in over a decade. They said we were lucky to be alive. Maybe we were. But that night, in the motel room they gave us, I looked out the window, and across the street, in a vacant lot, a flickering neon sign read, "Midnight Special Diner, open 24 hours. The rules never disappear. They just change locations. There's always another town, another night shift, another booth 7. Maybe I didn't break the cycle. Maybe I just passed the torch." So if you ever find yourself working nights at a frozen diner in the middle of nowhere, remember this. Don't look in the mirror. Don't talk to the customers. And whatever you do, don't sit in booth 7, because someone already is, and they look just like you.